Not long ago, City 17 went through a large phase of urban renewal which transformed this into this. Don't remember what I'm talking about? Let me provide a brief recap.
City 17 is missing out on its true potential. It could have more American infrastructure. That's no good. My army of Mantis Men. We have created the City 17 Redevelopment Office. We have a fleet of semi-trucks. The workers are revolting before we've even begun. They want wine and eggs.
It's been a year since this happened, and life in City 17 is great. With the Combine autocracy long over, the civilians of the city can now enjoy the thrills and joys of capitalism. And we can see this with their incessant consumption of Starbucks coffee and endless Walmart trips. Traffic is also the worst it's ever been, and the 6-lane highway that citizens traverse to get into City 17 is constantly backed up, much like the 405. But nonetheless, it proves to be an extremely popular destination for both tourists and locals. However, due to the vast consumption of land for parking spaces and highways, both apartments and homes are hard to come by, and rent has skyrocketed in the city. This problem has further been exacerbated by numerous large businesses relocating to City 17, making the city not only a desirable place to work, but live as well. It has become a city of the bourgeois, and the proletariat have been relegated to the faraway town of Ravenholm, only connected to this center of wealth by a crappy highway and a new commuter rail connection. If you ask a man in a suit in the city about what he thinks of Ravenholm, he will reply that it is dangerous, and that if you go there you will get your wallet stolen, your ass kicked, and your life ruined forever. While this might be an exaggeration, it's certainly not the nicest place to live in. We even sent in a camera crew to capture footage of this town, and it's certainly no liberal paradise or suburb.
What would you say is the best and worst thing about Ravenholm?
Well, we don't got much. We're in a movie theater, and we kind of live in a food desert, honestly. I gotta go to White Forest to, get my vegetables and stuff, but, rent's cheap at least. Yeah, there's a lot of bad, but it is home. And I like my community, I grew up here, before the zombies came in. Then the government took care of them and I got to move back in. It felt like I was home.
Would you move to City 17 if you had the chance?
Hell no. That place has no character or community. I sure as hell hope they don't want to move here. You know what I'm saying?
It certainly seemed like Ravenholm was set to be a community of working class people who worked in industry and simply sought to make a living for themselves and their family. Except this would not last, because one man decided that they wanted a change of pace, and this singular person would change Ravenholm forever. This is the story of how Ravenholm became gentrified. To better understand the events that preceded the gentrification of Ravenholm, it's first important to explain the context around two suburbs of City 17, Ravenholm itself and the coast. In the weeks following the collapse of the Combine government, the new leadership of Mantis Men called upon volunteers to join the Mantis Special Forces, an elite group of fighters tasked with performing military operations that the Mantis Men could not perform due to their size and lack of opposable thumbs. The Mantis Special Forces had hundreds of goals and missions that they needed to accomplish in order to set forth the rule of law in City 17 and all across the planet. Two of these operations focused on the permanent removal of the Combine forces and extermination of zombies and aliens in both Ravenholm and the coast. The task force assigned to the coast had little issue in completing their goals, but the task force assigned to clearing out Ravenholm had a significantly harder time in clearing out the vast swaths of zombies and headcrabs that plagued the town. While the majority of the task forces completed their goals in a matter of days, the Ravenholm task force required 4 months and hundreds of troops in order to accomplish their goal. By the time the task force completed their job, the entirety of the new road system in City 17 was already complete. Due to Ravenholm's prior purpose as an industrial center, it acted as an important resource to the new economy the Mantis Men had started. With close proximity to housing, it became an area of cheap rent and high paychecks. On the other hand, the coast had a different story. Isolated and far away from City 17, it became the home to the rich and powerful, who were largely political advisors and government leaders appointed by the Mantis Men to help manage the new government. Most of its residents appreciated the quaint and quiet nature of the coast, except one. The son of the City 17 transportation director, Prometheus Jorgen, lived peacefully in his father's coastal home for years. making paintings and art to sell at exhibitions. He enjoyed his life on the coast, but was far removed from the problems of the proletariat due to his vast wealth. On a business trip with his father to the Ravenholm train station, he found himself quite enchanted by the town given its dense architecture and tight-knit community. He would end up moving out of his father's coastal home to create an art studio in the town. Here, he continued to create his art pieces, and spent hours of his time studying his environment and the town in which he lived. Nobody really knew who he was at the time, however, and they assumed he was just some weirdo who was visiting. Boy, were they going to be proven wrong. Due to the cheap property rates in the town, he decided that it would be best to purchase an abandoned storefront to convert into an art gallery to exhibit his work. Naturally, the citizens of Ravenholm didn't exactly find this entertaining and found it rather bizarre given its proximity to a gun store and an IHOP. Except the gallery received some significant visitors, most of them being affluent admirers of his work. It grew so popular that artists, influencers, and numerous high-ranking individuals of the government, including a member of the Mantis Council, would attend showings, causing a significant spur of activity in an otherwise silent town. Following the showings, a lot of these individuals began to have similar revelations like Prometheus did. A few of them even confided in Prometheus about their fascination with the town, and asked about what decision led him to move there. He replied that he bore a similar interest in the vibes in the community, and this is where an idea was born. A month later, Prometheus held a gala to demonstrate an enormous new piece he had been working on for weeks. It was a huge event packed full of VIPs and even famous art figures from around the world. While he gave remarks to thank everyone for their graciousness and time, he also spent the time to announce his new project,
Artist lofts and chai lattes.
You see, while simultaneously working on his masterpiece, he also took the time to begin renovations on an old textile mill to convert it to lofts that would be solely sold to artists. This effort would prove to be a great success as he received more than 200 applications in 1 week, all of which were from Ivy League grads and fashion influencers. After this great success with his work in real estate, he decided to come home for the weekend to share the news and celebrate with his father. He enjoyed a succulent and heartfelt dinner with his family and contemplated his future. For his entire life, he thought he was going to be an esteemed artist, and it almost seems as if this was going to be his future. Except, now he believes that maybe he has an opportunity in real estate, that maybe he can become more powerful than even his own father. Standing outside his father's house, he contemplates the world he lived in not long ago. During the rule of the Combine, he was forced to dance for the Combine to amuse them, and he remembered how cruel it all was. The Combine would say, "Dance, boy, dance," and he would dance, and he would have no choice but to dance. Now, he lived in a world where the Combine didn't force him to dance. He now had the opportunity to form the world to his will, like Play-Doh that a child had sneezed in. Or like those ASMR Goo videos. Month by month, Prometheus Jorgen would continue purchasing more buildings in Ravenholm and converting them to luxury apartments, slowly pricing out the residents who had lived there long before his arrival. As he purchased more and more properties, and his wealth grew, he decided to build new buildings in addition, and Ravenholm began to be crafted in his image. As more and more residents were priced out of Ravenholm, they were forced to look elsewhere, and large villages began forming on the coast not far from where Prometheus used to live. At the time, however, he was entirely unaware of this development. To both the layman and the rich, this was a noticeable change in the demographic makeup of the region. But it was overshadowed by something far worse. Hitler had come back. Given this distraction, Prometheus thought nothing of the people he displaced. If anything, he thought he was doing something great by offering all this luxury housing to artists and creatives. This rapid demographic change would also lead to a change in the businesses in the town, with a rapid influx of large companies establishing new franchises. Mima's Corner Grocery Store would be replaced with an Erewhon. Ravenholm Coffee Company would be replaced with, once again, a Starbucks. Jack's Books and Toys would be replaced with a Barnes & Nobles, and the list goes on and on and on. Except, there was one, which involved a lot of debate due to its specialties, and questioning from the town zoning committee, and we actually have a recording of this very conversation.
There are just certain design choices that were made that we don't fully understand. We were hoping that you could shed some light on those.
She can dispense ice cream. She can dispense ice cream. She's equipped with ice cream. She can dispense ice cream. She can even dispense ice cream.
With all due respect, those aren't the design choices we were curious about, Mr.
Kleiner.
These unique and one-of-a-kind businesses began to make Ravenholm a social media sensation and generated millions of impressions online. drawing in thousands and thousands of tourists to indulge in the goods that the town had to offer, as well as all the art that Prometheus had created.
Just got a mocha poo poo frappe from Starbucks. Can't wait to check out the Jorgen art gallery later. Hashtag blessed, hashtag swaggy swaggy. Decided to go to Ravenholm for the weekend. Turns out they have an Erewhon here. Yeah, well, I ended up buying a chicken sandwich for $46 and would definitely come back here. Totally worth it. Hashtag Ravenholm, hashtag sandwich, hashtag so yummy.
Wow, what a hidden gem. The City 17 reporter has declared Ravenholm as the place to retire, and I can totally see why. This place is gorgeous, and oh my, the history too. Apparently Gordon Freeman was here long ago. Hashtag history, hashtag one free man, hashtag unforeseen consequences.
After more than a year of development, Ravenholm had become completely gentrified. The last bastion of the proletariat had been uprooted by the rich, and large swaths of the working class had been relegated to the land along the coast. What were once small villages were now huge cities with living conditions rivaling that of the medieval games. Among the thousands who now lived along the coast, ironically on the foothold of the bourgeois, there was one former resident of Ravenholm who was not just upset, but furious with his displacement. Revolt was the goal of many, but the Mantis Men had placed military forces and police throughout the villages to ensure no one stepped out of line. A significant contrast from the now gentrified Ravenholm where there was few police to be seen. This is where the story of Ricolas Choptank begins. He bore significant hatred towards the gentrifiers of Ravenholm, especially Prometheus. As one of the last citizens to be priced out of Ravenholm, he had worked as an ice cream dealer and witnessed how Prometheus had started a movement which completely destroyed his community. He had preached vitriol against the regime of the Mantis Men and Prometheus, and swore to take back the town he and thousands had lived in long before. For months, he had secretly been drawing up plans to arm a resistance to take back their home, something that the Mantis Men would likely fight strongly against. After more and more people were pushed out to the coast and Nova Prospect, including his own mother, who had lived as far as City 17, Ricolas decided it was finally time to strike back. Yet, many aligned with his ideas questioned this plan. Would disobeying the Mantis Men be a wise choice? After all, they were the original liberators of the human race from the Combine rule, so why would they relegate the humans to the slums? Ricolas concluded that the Mantis Council was largely unaware of these developments, as most of the administrative duties like Secretary of Defense and Secretary of Housing were assumed by rich humans anyways. Perhaps protesting would make them pay attention to the issues at hand, and they would step in to change things for the better. And so, Ricolas and the proletariat began to protest and started a march into Ravenholm. With police overwhelmed, they faced little resistance and continued their journey to get to their former home. At the same time, Prometheus Jorgen was on his way home to his father's home on the coast, and noticed this large mass of people on the highway. He asked the police officer what exactly was happening, and he told him about how they were marching to Ravenholm. This is when it became clear to Prometheus. This was his fault. Immediately returning to Ravenholm, he began to kick out all of his rich tenants. He wanted to own up to his mistakes and fix the issues that he had caused in order to fix the community that he had originally been enchanted with. As he did this, the protesters had arrived in Ravenholm. The new residents of Ravenholm were furious with Prometheus trying to kick them out, and with the influx of protesters. And so, they had called upon the police and the military to try and disperse them. Ricolas, leading the group, explained their demands to the police. They wanted their home back, and they wanted the bourgeois to leave. He claimed it was not only unfair that they lost their homes, but that the caramel cold brew crazy coffee was $26. Way too unaffordable. The commander refused to acknowledge his demands, and then a fight broke out. As the protesters and police clashed, Prometheus witnessed this conflict and tried to get their attention to try and explain what he wanted to do. Prometheus wanted to offer all of his homes to the protesters to rebuild the spirit of Ravenholm. As he climbed the tower to try and get everyone's attention, he locked eyes with Ricolas. While the protesters were largely unarmed, Ricolas had come with a vengeance. Unaware of Prometheus' intention to repent, he lifted his hand, aimed it at the sky, and shot Prometheus with his Biden blast. all hell broke loose. The fight in Ravenholm was largely a stalemate until Iron Man arrived, and with this development, the Mantis Men had no choice but to pay attention to the conflict. In response to this, the Mantis Council ordered a series of airstrikes in Ravenholm, with complete disregard to their own forces and allies that were present within the town at the time. The result of this action is largely unknown at this time. A question does stand as to whether or not Ricolas, the protesters, the rich, the police, or even Iron Man survived the bombing. However, what is certain is that this decision started a movement, which reverberated across the entire planet. The Mantis Men were experiencing a class revolt unlike anything ever seen in history, and martial law was implemented. Now, things are starting to get strange. There are rumors that this was all part of a huge plan to enforce martial law, or even that this was a plan put forth by the Mantis Men themselves. But for now, we don't have any answers to these questions. What we do know is that the fabric of City 17 is collapsing. And while urban renewal provided joy and jubilation to the civilians of the city, it appears that this is no longer the case. And only time will tell as to how this story ultimately concludes. Thank you so much for watching. It has literally been months since I made something, and there are excuses for why, but I won't say what those are because frankly it's a waste of time. What I will say is that I have a literal metric ton of projects that I'm working on at this very moment. I mean, literally just too many to talk about right now, so bear with me. The wait will not be long because I have set forth a very rigorous plan. If you want to keep up to date with all of my videos, then you can follow me on Blue Sky in addition to Twitter. I still have a Twitter and I kinda use it, mostly just to look at Minecraft builds, so for all updates, peep the Blue Sky. If you enjoyed this video, a like is always appreciated, and make sure to subscribe! I'm also open to ideas and input about what you would like to see, so feel free to leave a comment with suggestions, and I will try my best to look at them. You can also DM me on Twitter or Blue Sky. Peace and love, my friends.